Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Living on Blockchain. Today, we are speaking to Rob. Rob, he's the founder of Bitsaga, which is a Belgium based consultancy company that helps institutions as well as individuals secure their Bitcoin with top tier self custody setup. Rob's approach goes way beyond recommending hardware wallets. He builds peace of mind through multi sig, custom onboarding, and hands on education. We've talked a lot about in this particular episode why most Bitcoin holders are underprepared for the real threats, what the process of moving off exchanges should ideally look like, and also about sovereign custody. So whether you are exploring just self-custody or deep, you are deep in the multi-sig territory, there is so much to learn from this conversation. I can't wait for you guys to hear this. Let's deep dive right in.
Hi, Rob. Thank you so much for making out the time to speak to me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me, Therusha. Great to be here.
Likewise, it's wonderful to have you here. So, for our listeners, can you set a little context? Tell us a little about yourself and your journey so far into Web3.
My journey, I got into Bitcoin crypto relatively early on, I guess, before the 2017 cycle, and then quickly got distracted a little bit by many of the ICOs and dove into many of the shiny brand new things that are all trying to grasp your attention and that are going to the moon as they promise. But over the years, with a very technical background that I have as software engineer, I kept digging into the more technical sides of crypto Web3, and also wrote smart contracts on Ethereum, dove into the technical details of the Avalanche chain. I mean, it's a wild west out there. There's so much to do and explore. Extremely interesting stuff, but kept on digging, kept on researching, always on the lookout for this technical, yeah, just the things that are better. There's always something better to explore. And over the years, I really returned back home to Bitcoin. I am, as they say, a total Bitcoin maximalist, or that's what I've become now. So that's in a nutshell, I guess, my journey, and then in maximalism and seeing Bitcoin for what it is, or in my opinion, like the absolute greatest revolution that we are experiencing, besides AI at the moment, I guess. Um, having feeling the need to do something with this. And then Bitsaga, my security startup, came to be. At first, it was a payment gateway processor, but now it's Bitcoin security, doing hardware and consultancy. In a nutshell, we can go there more later. But that's a little bit my story so far.
Awesome. Yes, I do remember that, you guys were a payment gateway at some point. So, it's wonderful that, you've had quite a journey and with your experience, you are interested and you're so sold on the entire Bitcoin narrative. So, can you tell me a little about what kind of piqued your interest in Bitcoin? You mentioned that you got in early with Bitcoin and crypto. What was that particular moment where you thought that, okay, this piece of technology is like the next big revolution?
So for me, I've always been triggered by the underlying technicalities more. And I kept on reading white papers and not necessarily understanding like even half of it, but really that's what I was trying to use as signal to filter out in the high noise environment that crypto can often be. And then I remember reading the Lightning Network white paper, and that's the fast layer upon Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin can be very slow and expensive to make transactions, and the Lightning Network is really a layer on top of it to make it really quickly, really cheap. And so reading it, it didn't really trigger yet anything. I thought it was extremely interesting, but then actually doing it, making a Lightning transaction by just scanning a QR code and sending and receiving Bitcoin across the world instantly for basically practically no transaction costs. That was a huge eye-opening moment to me to really feel, okay, Bitcoin cannot just be a huge store of value, but also the medium of exchange. And that was where many of the crypto promises to me broke down, because a lot of the reasons that you hear for this or that project is because of efficiency and speed and TPS, transactions per second, and whatnot. And then all of these things were seemed suddenly to be covered by Bitcoin. And I was like, started to get very critical of the rest of the projects. So reading about the Lightning Network and then actually also feeling it, experiencing it by just in real life usage, by being able to pay for a beer on a Bitcoin conference, made it so real for me that it clicked on a very different level for me.
Right. I think, yeah, when the first time you do a transaction and when you do it for something tangible, I think then it really kind of clicks in your head. I remember the first time I used a Bitcoin ATM somewhere in Canada, and this is several years ago. And that was like the moment for me, and I realized, okay, this is real, and they are not just it's not a passing phase, and that is when the technology really hit home for me. So I feel like these stories where people talk about how the technology actually cemented itself in their brain, are always very interesting. So now let's talk a little about Bitsaga. You started as a payment gateway, and now you're dealing with Bitcoin security and custodial security consultancy as well. So let's talk a little about that.
Yeah, so I thought initially, well, everyone's very soon going to want to pay with Bitcoin, and merchants are going to want to accept it because, well, this is one of the greatest pieces of technology ever. But that was way too overly exciting and optimistic. And I do obviously still believe that that is going to happen. But um, we get reminded pretty often, and we can see that in many different aspects, that we are so early. We are so early, and we can see that in price, in volatility, in adoption of various different things, and understanding of the common people, how many of a lot of knowledge is still lacking with a lot of people. And then also with the payment gateway stuff, I mean, there's just no demand for it, or at least from what I was seeing as Bitsaga. Merchants are not really interested in this volatile magic internet money thing that's for criminals and wastes energy. So I shifted rather, well, not rather quickly, but I did shift over time more toward, okay, where is their demand? For those people that do get it, and that's a relatively small number of people, they want to protect it. They want to protect it themselves. They don't want to leave it on an exchange. You hear that pretty quickly, that not your keys, not your coins. You shouldn't keep your crypto, your Bitcoin on an exchange or in some ETF or some platform or some lend some interest bearing instrument, whatever. You want to hold it yourself. You need to secure it yourself. And with great power comes great responsibility. It's a powerful piece of technology. Nobody can stop you from transacting, but you have to think really well about how you are protecting, securing your little tokens of freedom, and just grasping and understanding crypto and Bitcoin is a whole journey in and of itself. And then the journey of protecting it yourself, moving it into self custody, moving it out of an exchange into either your phone or your laptop, and then into a harder wallet, cold storage. That's a whole other journey. So that's the journey that Bitsaga helps with, not just convincing people of the why, because there's a lot of people and great podcasts and organizations and content doing that. But for those that do get it and they want to protect it themselves, that's what we are doing now, helping people to secure their Bitcoin, also to acquire more significant amounts, handle more significant amounts, because most people, they can figure out to buy some Bitcoin on exchange, grab a harder wallet, and move it off the exchange onto the harder wallet. But that's just the beginning of your security journey. I mean, the value keeps going up. You're probably investing more as you're understanding more. And so the need for your security keeps increasing forever. So there's a lot of steps to take beyond the hardware wallet, more into the realms of passphrases, shamirs, multisig, especially. Bitsaga is very much focused and specialized into the multisig, protecting your Bitcoin with multiple keys instead of one. So that's the evolution there. And currently, we're official reseller of many of the big Bitcoin hardware wallet brands, and then also mainly doing the consultancy, the guidance with that, because there's no one size fits all solution. It's all custom tailor fit client based. Okay, you have specific needs, and that's where we focus on helping clients to secure their Bitcoin.
Okay, so you are right about that. I think even today, we are still early, and merchants, especially that come from a traditional background, do not see value in accepting Bitcoin. And I'm not even sure actually if a lot of Bitcoin holders are very interested in making day-to-day transactions with Bitcoin. It is like I have always kind of compared this with gold. Bitcoin is like digital gold, and I'm not sure if in this day and age, with the markets the way they are, people would be really interested in making day-to-day purchases with gold because they see it as an investment, and I think that's the case with Bitcoin as well. But this is just my very limited perspective. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so you very often hear the comparison with gold, and then Bitcoin is a digital gold, and in some very real sense, it absolutely is, because what I try to do here, and with many things, is zoom out. What are the underlying principles that drive this? That what makes gold so valuable? And why do we say that Bitcoin is digital gold? Well, to me, when I zoom out and try to approach this from first principles, is well, gold's very valuable because it's scarce. That's what it boils down to. Nobody can create more gold. More gold
Right.
is being mined at about 1.5%. That's the rate of the supply increase. And that's just what makes it such a good money that over thousands of years we have found gold to be the best form of money because it is so limited in supply. Now, Bitcoin does that like pretty much infinitely better, and 1.5% doesn't sound like a lot, but Bitcoin it's currently still being mined. But when it's all distributed, there's no inflation, zero, and mathematically, when you extrapolate that, it is infinitely better. And then also being digital, the fact that you can send it to a merchant at the other side of the globe by scanning a QR code instantly with instant settlement at very low friction, practically zero transaction cost, makes it also so not just on the store of value function, where it has no inflation, where the supply is absolutely fixed, it's way superior than gold, but also on the medium of exchange function, because gold is so clunky and heavy, and nobody uses it, indeed, as you say, as a medium of exchange because it's just utterly impractical. But Bitcoin, it's extremely practical for that, especially then the Lightning Network. So it is absolutely gold in in the principles that make both of these things valuable, scarcity, but it is so much better. I think it's like you can't really put numbers on, but it's at least 10 times better in a store of value function, and at least 10 times better in the medium of exchange function. So the comparison is real and valuable, but I think it's really important to grasp that Bitcoin is so much better than gold.
Right. Yeah, I think there are certain similarities, and obviously certain things that does set Bitcoin apart. This is new technology, and I think people who are investing in gold, they are still set in their old ways, even though there are many platforms that do allow for investment in gold via the digital medium. But I think, anyway, I think I digress. So now, we come back to Bitsaga, and you mentioned that, obviously you're dealing with security of Bitcoin, that users, are these retail users or are these institutional investors as well?
So it is mostly retail users, absolutely.
Okay.
There has been some focus on exploring the business, corporations, enterprise users, but similar to the payment gateway story, actually, demand, from what I can see, excuse me, currently seems rather limited from the corporations, from the institution side. And I think that is partly related to Bitsaga's Belgian-based EU. We have draconic, monstrous regulations, and corporations are just scared and don't want to bother yet with going down that route. But individuals, it's a lot easier. You can just send money to an exchange, buy Bitcoin, and store it on a hardware wallet. So I think that's part of the reason why we're mainly seeing demand from individuals in that sense, but also this is also very interesting, families as a whole, because once Bitcoin clicks for someone, he's got to tell about it. And you'll know you're talking to a Bitcoin maximalist because he'll tell you about it. Now I guess already somewhat exited that crusader phase.
Hmm.
No more actively trying to convince people, because it can take 3 minutes or it can take 3 years, and you don't know who you're talking to. But for those that have, as I already said, determined for themselves, okay, I want a piece of this in my portfolio. We guide them and they convince friends and family. So we also guide individuals, and often it's families, and especially in the context of multi-sig, where multiple people can hold keys, that you have a distributed setup. It's just a beautiful fit for families to also think about inheritance. What if something happens to me, that my family members can still access my funds? These are the things that we specialize in, but individuals mostly. Yeah.
Okay. And what are the kind of initial hurdles that you faced while you were setting this up? And how are you reaching out to these individuals so that they can avail your services?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the first part of your question. I'm sorry.
What were the kind of hurdles that you faced in, setting up Bitsaga? And for vis-a-vis these retail users, how are you reaching out to them so that they can avail your services?
So the hurdles you're saying, right? Um, well, there's a lot of challenges that Bitsaga has encountered.
Right.
Um, not sure if I'm getting the question right, but for example, this is a pretty juicy story. Bitsaga has been completely unbanked, um, meaning bank accounts getting blocked, personal account, savings account, checkings account, business account, personal business account, both the savings and checkings accounts also, from two banks at the same time without communication and warning, just completely ejected out of the fiat, the euros financial system. That was pretty brutal to deal with, not only as a business but also as a person, to get completely unbanked. These are the kind of stories that you
Right.
So that was pretty harsh, pretty brutal, but also overall regulations. There's various things that I would like to do as a business or as software or yeah, just as services that in the EU I'm simply not allowed, or I have to fill in a ridiculous amount of paperwork. So this is really a constraint on growth. So building a business is hard. Everyone who has built a business knows this, and then
Yeah.
building a Bitcoin business, that's next level hard. You
Yeah.
are experiencing friction on so many different levels, so it's hard to navigate that. So we try to keep it very simple. Just provide advice and sell harder wallets. Would love to be actually a key custodian where Bitsaga holds one key in the context of a multi-sig setup, and then people hold two other keys, for example. These are the schemes that you see with big US companies like Casa, Unchained, and OnRamp, or the Bitcoin Advisor in Australia, where they hold one key, and users can easily enter the world of multisig, but not allowed to, or we have to do this draconic administrative bullshit with huge capital requirements. So it's tough. It's absolutely tough, but we focus on what's driving us, the principles, that it is about freedom from bankers and politicians, and we're absolutely experiencing these troubles and trying to help people to secure their own part, and trying to do it simple on a very personal approach where there's no fixed solution. Talk to clients, listen to what their needs are. What are your requirements? Do you have family members involved? What is your transaction frequency? How do you see the future of your stack? Are you going to be buying? Are you going to be selling? What are your priorities? It always has to be easy. And then we look at the right tools, both hardware, both software, and we implement a tailor-made solution with the right tools for that situation. But that's how we can keep it simple and valuable to clients. But growing the business has had some hurdles. Yes, absolutely.
Right. So, okay, you've mentioned how obviously setting up any business is hard, and then when you're dealing with crypto in any way, Bitcoin in any way, it becomes trebly harder, I think. And I have faced that too, considering, I was running one of the first Ethereum exchanges of India, and almost overnight, a policy, not even a policy, it was just an order that came from the central bank that kind of made it difficult for us to continue running that business. So I totally understand where you're coming from, that, this, there is a lot of resistance when you're trying to set something like this up. So to that effect, can you tell us, about the jurisdiction which you guys operate? Are you limited in terms of the demography in any way? What are the kind of how do you stay compliant in the jurisdictions that you are operating?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And um, this came to me out of necessity because we're not
Hmm.
allowed to do a lot of things. And um, the beautiful thing about the current model of Bitsaga, which is just selling harder wallets basically, and then also steal backups, nodes, everything that's really related to that's even remotely related to securing your Bitcoin in self custody. So just and which is just specialized USB device, specialized computer, specialized hardware. So in that sense, we're just a web shop. So there's no real struggles there. However, Stripe also deplatformed us a while back because we're selling Bitcoin miners. That's
Right.
also a similar story, actually. But on top of that, it's so besides the selling hardware wallets, it's just consultancy. It's just an opinion. There is nothing proprietary. Everybody can do what we're doing. Everybody can just buy the hardware wallet and take Bitcoin in self custody and even do rather complex multi-sig setups themselves. But it just takes time and effort
Right.
to figure it all out. And that's the value proposition, that we help you do that. And the beauty of nothing proprietary, totally hardware and software agnostic, is that we're allowed to do this everywhere. Belgium, Europe, and there's also some USA, Dubai, Asian clients that contact us, mainly Benelux, so Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and European, but mostly Belgium clients because Bitsaga is Belgium based. But because the model is so simple, just hardware wallets and just consultancy guidance, we're allowed to do that everywhere so far. That might change in the future, but
Hmm.
simplicity is helping us out there.
Okay. And how are you reaching out to these users? Like, what is the greater marketing strategy that you guys are deploying to reach out to these retail users who might need this?
So that's also perhaps maybe pretty unique. Well, there's zero cold outreach from Bitcoin to clients directly, active with some content on X and LinkedIn, and perhaps some presence on conferences, but is also rather limited. Word of mouth a lot. The first clients are happy. They tell about the people in their network, like, hey, you want to secure your Bitcoin, you got a significant amount. Yeah, talk to Bitsaga. These guys can really help you with hardware and guidance. So it's a little bit of everything. It's growing very organically, and that's very intentional, very by design, because I wanna do something that absolutely resonates. You can have a lower quality product or service and then just force your way into the market by doing really good marketing or however you place your product and service. But I really want to fine tune it and focus on quality. So everything is actually growing organically mostly. There's very little cold outreach, just by content, just by providing some free nuggets. It's a quote by Alex Hermosi that I really love is give away the secrets, sell the implementation. And that's what we're doing
Hmm.
really is there's nothing, as I said, there's nothing proprietary. This is what we do. You can do it yourself. But people, and rightfully so, are scared to do it
Right.
themselves. There's just so many questions. There's so much to take into account. Multisig has really become more approachable, but it's scary when you're moving significant funds. Something can go wrong. It's really scary, and that's what we help with. But it's all very natural.
Right. Okay, yeah, I would imagine that it can be very daunting for anybody who's trying to set this up initially or trying to move funds. You emphasize a lot of multi-sig setups, and with due reason, and I truly concur with you there. But for our listeners, can you talk a little about multi-signature setups and how do they enhance the security of the crypto that you're holding or the Bitcoin you're holding?
Yes. Love the question because that is indeed the core. So perhaps a little bit of a step back that this is not for everyone, right? So where you start is by understanding Bitcoin and then understanding, okay, gotta get myself some, buy some on an exchange, and then the next steps are, okay, gotta take it into self custody, put it on a hardware wallet, and then you're okay. I'm good. But then, as I said, it your stack keeps on growing. The value keeps increasing, and some people, business people, investors, more high net worth individuals, they tend to start out with more significant amounts, 6 digits and up, like one
Right.
Bitcoin and up, and these people, it might not be the best fit to start out with just a hardware wallet. They might be better off with the more advanced security solutions, right? If you are managing more significant holdings, then you want more significant security. And that's really the focus here. So multisig might not be the best fit for you if you are just entering the space. This is the first time or you're just really early on your journey. So that's really something that I want to pass along. It is a more advanced security scheme, and really fitting for the more high net worth individuals, which is really the target group more of Bitsaga. But it's become so more approachable that even with half a Bitcoin and even below, I think it's very viable to start doing multisig. So, okay, that being said, that it's not for everyone. Multisig, what is it? So, as I said, it's instead of securing your Bitcoin, and this is not unique to Bitcoin, it also applies to crypto, but Bitsaga focuses on Bitcoin, is you manage your Bitcoin not with a single key, with a single hardware wallet, but with multiple keys, like 3. And the magic here is that you would need 2 out of the 3 keys to send some Bitcoin, to make a transaction. So you can have, let's just make it easy here, 3 of the same hardware wallets. There's always different configurations options. And what often happens is someone keeps one hardware wallet at home, one hardware wallet at a family member or at a custodial service, like one of the American services, not Bitsaga, and then one key at a bank or a notary or somewhere else as a backup key. And then the beautiful thing that then arises is you have fixed your single point of failure because you're not storing your Bitcoin in a single hardware wallet anymore. It's
Right.
stored on the 3 separate ones that you can lose one of the hardware wallets. One can get stolen, one can get destroyed, one can get something critical can go wrong with one of the keys. And you don't have to panic. You don't have to worry about that. And so that's an absolutely beautiful thing that happens because when talking to clients, the main problem that arises, and that's actually the core thing that Bitsaga does, is people worry about their Bitcoin. And rightfully so, because hell of a lot of things can go wrong. It can get stolen, it can get hacked, you can make a mistake. The user is actually the most dangerous piece of the security setup often. And multisig protects against not just external threats like attacks, but also internal threats like your own
Yeah.
mistake. You can make a mistake with one of the keys. So that's just the approach to solve many of the worries that people tend to have when you're managing significant funds. You start to, especially if it's on a single hardware wallet on one device, and something can go wrong. And yeah, you can have a backup, but the single point of failure, that principle, that remains, whatever it is that you do. If you have 5 backups, you have 5 single points of failure. And so multisig, multiple keys, That's an approach. And it can take many different shapes and sizes. You can have 3 keys, you can have 5 keys, you can have any number of keys, really. Um, but this principle, that's what we're um, applying to rid people of their worries when managing their Bitcoin in self custody. That's what it's about.
Awesome. Thank you for kind of sharing that and explaining that in such a beautiful way. Uh, and I'm sure that, a lot more users, they're becoming more aware, but like you said, this is something that perhaps, you know, somebody who's just starting off, they might not necessarily require it. Obviously, it's good practice, but the call can be taken by the user vis-a-vis this. Now, we've talked a little about multi-sig wallets and setups. What are your thoughts on open source hardware wallets versus the proprietary ones? Do you do you recommend any kind of any particular brand or any particular wallet to your users and clients?
Yeah, so this is a very popular question. I get that question a lot. And just boils down to, hey Rob, what's the best Bitcoin hardware wallet? And I
Mm,
kind of love and hate that question at the same time because it's like asking what's the best car.
right.
Well, I mean, there's so many options out there. It really it depends on preference. It depends on situation. In some sense, now the market for hardware wallet is not as big as cars, but you get the point. So that being said, I do believe that, as you said, open source is an absolute must-have compared to closed source, and that's just because
Mm,
of the principles that underpin Bitcoin. This is about um, not having to trust government, central institutions, banks, and whatnot. And when you have a closed source wallet, it doesn't even matter if it's a hardware wallet or a software wallet. Any piece of tool that you're using to manage your Bitcoin, you are by definition trusting that the company, the producer, the manufacturer of said hardware wallet, software wallet, to not do anything fishy under the hood. And that's just very counterintuitive. So, open source hardware, open source software is an absolute must have. And that's not too hard because there's many great options out there. Ledger not being one of them. It is a very popular option out there, but
mm,
yeah, that's one of the reasons, and there's many, to really avoid Ledger. Um, so also said there's not really a best, but one that we heavily rely on and use often in client setups is the Foundation Passport. It's more premium,
mm,
250 euros on the Bitsaga website, hardware wallet, air gapped, which means it's camera based. It can work by just scanning QR codes, which is not only superior on a security perspective, but also superior on a usability perspective because you don't have to plug in a cable over a USB and push any janky buttons on the more cheaper devices. So that's one we use rather often. And then also Seed Signer, the Seed Signer Premium, which is a totally open source um, software and hardware implementation by the community. There's no real company behind it. So that's a very beautiful project that we absolutely love. And then perhaps as a third one, the Blockstream Jade Plus by the Blockstream company. The initial Jade was a very cheap and, yeah, I must say janky device, but the Plus, the new version, is a significant upgrade. So these three devices are very popular and for very good reasons. They are more, priced above 150 euros, but for the setups that we're doing, managing somewhat more significant amounts, these are the tools that seem to be most fitting for these situations where it has to be also very secure, but also very usable. It's got to be easy to use. That's a very common theme that we keep hearing. And these three devices, so the Foundation Passport, Seed Signer also, especially in the premium edition, not so much in the 3D printed cases, and then the Blockstream Jade Plus. These are all very secure and easy to use open source Bitcoin hardware wallets that we are comfortable recommending.
Awesome. Thank you for those recommendations. And I think I would have to agree that the cheaper devices are usually a little difficult, or they're just clunky, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
they can be a little, it's inconvenient to use them. So yeah, these they come at a premium price point, but they do give that premium experience as well. So once again, thank you for sharing those. What are the kind of trends that you're observing in the Bitcoin security landscape, especially concerning self-custody?
So it's funny to see because I'm in somewhat of a bubble, especially in in Bitcoin, but the basics that we keep hammering on, and I've grown absolutely sick and tired of hearing them, but the mantra of not your keys, not your coins, for example, these basics are the mistakes that keep on happening. It's a little sad to see that this keeps on happening on a very consistent basis. But I think that's the nature of the game where everyone who's entering the space has the same things to learn, and they might skip a lot of the bad lessons that the investors before them have had. But luckily, there is a big focus on not storing your Bitcoin on exchanges or the custodial platforms and keep and moving it into self custody. That's a great thing to see, and I think that trend is going to continue a lot more in the future. And that's also something that we have to keep hammering on. Don't keep your Bitcoin on any sort of platform that might lure you with juicy interest rates or whatnot. Store it into self custody, and then the evolutions that we have seen the past couple of years, especially on Bitcoin, with the on the hardware layer, as I just said, with the camera-based devices, such that they can work with simply scanning QR codes. I mean, everybody knows scanning QR codes these days, so that's a beautiful thing to see. The air-gapped devices to be able to work with QR codes, multi-sig. That's perhaps my bubble very much is becoming a lot more popular, viable. It's entering people's minds. People are still scared of it and wonder, don't even know properly what it is. But because it's become so much more approachable because of changes on the protocol level, PSBTs, the partially signed Bitcoin transactions, on the hardware level with the camera-based devices that you can just scan QR codes, and then also on the software level, where a lot of great new tools and apps have become available over the past 5 years. It has become so much more easy and approachable compared to the past, that even for lower amounts, and well, let's say half a Bitcoin here, and I don't like to say these fixed amounts, but to give people an idea, it's become very viable to start to look at the more advanced security schemes. And I think that trend is going to continue. Security was very difficult, and there's always going to be frontiers where new and exciting stuff is initially very complex, but as the technology matures, they are becoming more accessible. And that's a great trend to see, that something as advanced security as multisig is becoming more popular and more approachable for more regular people, let's say. And in the future, I'm really excited to see what's coming. Taproot to roll out further with increased on-chain privacy, and more devices. It's really early. I have 14, 15 devices to compare, working on a huge guide. But I think there's going to be an absolute explosion. Open source, secure element, the specialized chip inside many hardware wallets, Tropic Thunder, Tropic Zero, can't come up with the name, has recently released the world's first open source secure element. And I'm expecting to see a lot of hardware wallets jump on that technology to implement, and to see a lot of hardware wallets, use an open source secure element chip to store the private key. So that's a trend that I'm anticipating to see, to get going. It's not really a trend that we're seeing. I see this innovation happened, and I think it is going to be a trend in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that is very interesting what you just mentioned. I'll be sure to check it out myself as well because I think, as you said, there are new frontiers opening up in terms of security and in terms of how easy and convenient this is becoming, and there is always something new to try out. Can you tell me a little about what is next for Bitsaga? Like, what is the next strategic priority for you for the venture for the next few years?
So a lot of time for me will be spent writing the book, Securing
Right.
Bitcoin. Deal with consensus network has been made. That is taking up some time right now, but also focusing further on the services related consultancy, because it's only been relatively recently where the shift happened from the hardware more into the consultancy, the guidance, the assistance that people need with Bitcoin, and it's very wide. Also, like recovery services, acquiring, selling, legal, fiscal advice. The focus is and will remain the security aspect and the services, but questions are very wide. And going forward, I think, it's going to be crazy year for Bitcoin and also for Bitsaga. There has been a recent pivot from
Hmm.
hardware more into the consultancy, and really crystallizing that to try and serve as many clients as possible. Demand is really taking off, and I don't anticipate many big changes anymore. Perhaps there might be, but the current trajectory seems very promising, to be able to offer both the hardware and the consultancy, to really be a one-stop shop for everyone's Bitcoin questions, especially related to security. It really seems to be a healthy trajectory, and just looking to continue that, because it has been a wobbly road to find the current trajectory. So I
Hmm.
really think onto something right now, and because feedback has been really positive. So staying course for now for this year. Perhaps next year there might be some more pivoting or extra things, but for now that's the focus.
Awesome. I think it's a, wiggly road, no matter what the niche, what business you're building. It's always trial and error, and it's always work in progress. More power to you guys for being able to catch on to a niche that seems to be working for you at the moment. And as long as, you're dynamic and ready to adapt to whatever the market and the world is throwing at you, I think it will all come together very well. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Trust me.
would you like to tell us a little about the book? Because I do want to know more about it, but I'm also running short on time. So this will be perhaps my second last question before I ask the last question and wrap up. But do you want to tell me about the book that you're writing on? When can we expect it to hit the market?
Yeah, so in short, securing Bitcoin, really the focus on evergreen principles, not so much on the latest hardware wallets, which might be obsolete by next year, but the evergreen principles on how to secure Bitcoin, that it can be a relevant work even years down the road. That's the focus, and it's looking to hit still this year. Might be close because I mean it's also shifting. I mean, there's many insights that arise when crystallizing everything that's in your head into a book. But yeah, that's the focus. That's the focus, for people to have one piece of literature, piece of text that they can use and then apply to their own life, and not just by superficial or quick tips and tricks, but a very durable approach, for like especially focusing on principles like no single point of failure, and these things. So yeah, that's in short, in a nutshell. But there's still a lot of things to crystallize. Should be hit by the end of the year.
Awesome, awesome. So all the best for that journey. I'm pretty sure it'll be very interesting. And like you said, getting whatever you have in your mind and from drawing from your experiences, putting them on paper, that is a fun journey. It's in itself, and I look forward to reading the book when it does come out. So thank you so much once again, Rob, for having this conversation with me. There's been such a different conversation than the one that we usually have with founders working on platforms. What you're doing is very pertinent, and you have a formidable reputation in this space. So more power to you guys. There's this one question that I ask everybody who comes on the show, and I'll be remiss to not ask you. If somebody, perhaps, usually what I ask people is, what would be your advice for people to start living on blockchain? But I'm going to tweak it up a little bit for you. If somebody is really starting to work in, crypto security, Bitcoin security, what would be your advice to them so that they can truly live on blockchain in a safe and secure manner?
So my approach to many of the important questions is to zoom out. Zoom out. It can happen on a temporal scale, where you're not looking at what happens this week, and not even this year, but really try to look at what's happening in decades and try to approach it from first principles, and then you can deduce the big trend lines that are underpinning many of the developments, and also with living on blockchain, if that's the framing. For me, when you approach this in that way, it boils down to freedom. Being free from bankers, politicians, central institutions, and you can really apply that to many daily practical decisions that you have to take. You have to have a goal, a vision to implement, and zooming out and trying to approach this from first principles. And when I do, yeah, as I said, if it's crystallized into one word, it really is freedom, and that's what it's all about. For me, at least, you get lured into the space with number go up and moonshot, make me rich gains. But yeah, come for the numbers, stay for the revolution. This is one of the most important things happening in our lives today. We're still very early. There's a lot of noise, but looking for that signal by approaching it from first principles, I think is very valuable to anyone in the space who tries to live on blockchain.
Wonderful. I think that Excellent piece of advice and a lovely way to end this episode. Thank you once again, Rob, for making the time to speak to us and educate us a little about Bitcoin security today. Any parting words before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think I've grasped the most important part for me, that it is about freedom. And the I've already dropped my favorite quote, that with great power comes great responsibility. We have
Mm,
been given a great piece of technology that gives a lot of power to the individual to stand up and protect ourselves from big, powerful people and institutions. But you have to take responsibility to manage that properly, and that's what we're trying to do, or help people to do that, to secure their little piece of freedom. And yeah, that's what it's all about.
awesome. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for making out the time.
Thanks for inviting me, Tarushu. Great to be here.